Audio unleashed. That's a good point. Anyway, tape's rolling.
I can hear the wow and flutter.
So that's the nerdiest joke you have ever told.
Welcome to the Audio
Unleashed
podcast. I'm Brent.
Yeah. I'm Dennis.
And we're here to talk to you today about audio stuff.
Yeah. Man, sometimes I feel like your extroversion rubs off on me and I don't like it.
I'm not extroverted. I test right in the middle on Myers-Briggs.
Oh, okay. All right. You say so.
I'm right in the middle. Anyway. I'm flamboyantly, I'm both flamboyant and I'm introverted at the same time. So
you're what is that? An enigma wrapped in a burrito, wrapped in a croissant? I don't know, something, whatever. Yeah. Let's make a podcast, buddy.
Let's do. And we're going to start with the biggest news that's happened so far today.
Yeah.
And also so far this year, probably.
Well, that's a good point, at least in terms of audio. So yeah, Bose Corporation has acquired the McIntosh Group, the leader in luxury high-performance audio. Boy, this is an interesting one. I think we're going to have a lot to...
McIntosh Group is the leader in luxury audio?
The comma would lead me to believe that that's the intent from the Bose press release. Yes, it says Bose Corporation acquires McIntosh Group, comma, the leader in luxury high-performance audio. Okay. So yeah, what does this mean? What effect is it going to have? We don't know. Podcast over. Bye. Anyway.
We're gonna have true wireless earphones with little blue meters in them.
Oh, now that is actually kind of appealing. I like a blue meter, man.
Yeah.
I'm like unironically, I love the look of Macintosh gear. I mean, I think it's just gorgeous. I know a lot of people don't dig it, but I just love it. So anyway,
well,
what are we going to talk about after that?
I'm excited to talk about this because it brings back memories, both good and bad. But the fact that I can remember anything is a joy. So the next one, I saw this YouTube video by our friend of the pod, Erin and it's called The Hidden Secrets of Børresen X3 Speaker Audiophiles Need to Know. I think there's a missing article in there somewhere, but he's a YouTuber, so he can get away with that. So anyway, I was kind of looking at this, and, I have an axe to grind with not so much Michael Børresen, who designed this speaker, I guess, but with the audiophiles who revere Michael Børresen and who revere anybody, right? These guys make audio gear, all right? They're not Obi-Wan Kenobi, okay? And yet the audio press treats these guys like they are Obi-Wan Kenobi / Yoda / whatever, right? Or Jesus or whatever. And I get really frustrated, and Michael Børresen is one of the people that they have elevated to this. And I've looked at his speakers and his amps and stuff, and it's like, oh, it looks fine. It looks like it's probably not too bad and probably works okay. But I actually kind of had some sort of communication with him because I basically sort of did a takedown of one of these RF fixing products that he makes that, right? Did a big article in Soundstage about how this doesn't work, or at least I don't see any way this could work. This one would like to prove to me how it works. Fine. And he actually responded on the email, not necessarily under his own name, but I could see that it was from him because I had, access to whatever that allows you to see where who the person is. Anyway, and he was making a lot of claims. And so I have a very skeptical attitude towards him, and a lot of people don't. Anyway, so long story short, I had to go look at this video, and it was a perfect Erin video. It was perfect.
Yeah.
I thought it was perfect. He was open-minded. He's like, hey, there's stuff I liked about this speaker. But then, he shows the measurements. He's like, there's some stuff I heard that was definitely a problem. And he does the measurements. He's like, here's the problem right there in the measurements. Yeah. And I looked at the measurements and I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah.
It's like, why is anybody making speakers like this now? Well, I guess the reason is we're going to talk about some other people's reviews, and they're talking about it like it's the greatest speaker ever made.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So we will discuss all this.
And as I teased to you before we started recording, I think there's actually one point that you and I are going to disagree on with regard to Erin's video. And but maybe not. I just never know with you. So it's going to be, we're going to hash that out and see if we agree or disagree. But it's going to be a fun conversation anyway.
Following that, is it my turn to talk?
No, it's my turn.
Okay, you talk. Talk now.
Yeah. Okay. So, as most people have probably heard, a few weeks ago, Apple pushed an update to its AirPods Pro 2 true wireless earphones that effectively turned them into, I guess you'd call it sort of an over-the-counter hearing aid. You can now go with these things. If you have an iPhone, you can do a hearing test. It will give an audiogram, and it will actually do, hearing compensation. So we are bringing in our dear friend, headphone specialist Lauren Dragan, who currently works for Wirecutter, and we're going to talk like, what is this? Does it work? Does it work as well as promised? Does it work at all? What are our thoughts on it? And you, being the non-Apple guy that you are, also got an iPhone, did some testing. I've done some testing. So between the three of us, I think we're going to have some really interesting things to say about this development.
I think the Audio
Unleashed
podcast has kind of a monopoly on intelligent comments about AirPods Pro 2 hearing aid feature.
I'm just so excited because the only two people in my life who don't think I'm an idiot are going to be in the same conversation with me at the same time. This is going to be a delight.
Wow. Not even your wife?
Oh, God. Have you ever had a wife before?
Well, I have.
I know. Yeah.
So I don't think that's a good example of a wife. If you're going to hold her up as the paradigm of wives, we're all in big trouble. There'll never be a child again.
Anyway, what are we going to do for our patrons this week, buddy?
We are going to talk about, there's an article in strategy.com, which we'd love to read and love to quote because it's probably the best trade publication for, the sort of home theater audio focus, some video industry. Yeah. And it's talking about the latest, the CD Expo, which was in September, and how they have, attendance has gone down. And I thought, I was looking at that article, I'm thinking I haven't been to a CD show in a couple of years. I was at the very first one. And only ever missed one or two for, sickness or whatever. And, I'm kind of looking at this going I'm a little out of touch with it now because I don't really review hardly any products that would show up at that show. And I'm like, what's the place of CD nowadays? Is it still relevant? Do people still do that? I mean, because we've had, you don't need CD to do home automation anymore.
No.
Yeah, you can buy all that stuff at Home Depot now and put it in yourself. And of course, a lot of people don't want to do that, but that's my big question. Home theaters and stuff are, I think, probably not as big of a deal as they used to be. So that's going to be our question for our, more of our trade side of things, which we do on our Patreon segment. We're going to ponder what's the future of all this, and we both know. Some, probably some people will disagree with us, and that's fine. And you can always, write us emails.
Absolutely, man. But before we get to that, let's talk about Bose, buddy, because this is big. This kind of we had to change plans at the last moment because we were not going to talk about this, and they literally announced it as we were prepping to record the episode. So anyway, how'd you come across the news?
They sent it to me.
When are they going to learn, man?
Well, I have a good relationship with Bose. I test their products for Wirecutter, and some of them we've picked, and I haven't had one that sucked in a long, long time, maybe ever, maybe certainly not since I've been with Wirecutter. And
well, congratulations, we just lost half our audience.
Well, anyway,
you're not allowed to say that Bose doesn't suck, buddy.
But Bose is a headphone and portable speaker company at this point. And some pro audio and things like that, right? But from the consumer side, they're basically a headphone, wireless speaker, maybe a couple sound bars here in their company, right? So I was shocked. I was having a conversation with a colleague yesterday, thinking like, what's up with Bose? They really seem to be kind of a little down and out and stuff. But now they did this. So now, Dennis, we have one of our famous audio
Unleashed
pop quizzes, which you are always on the receiving end.
I don't like them.
You could pop quiz me. Anyway, here's your pop quiz. Why did Bose do this?
Ooh. Well, I'm guessing the fact that you're asking means that there's a right answer. Car stuff, I guess.
Ding, 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 ding.
Okay.
Yeah. So here's the thing.
I got it right.
Bose has a really strong car audio development thing going on, right? And by really strong, I mean they have, dedicated facilities to do it. They're one of the really big players in car audio, and they really know what they're doing. And you can't be, if you're just some high-end audio brand, right? You can't just say, "Oh, we're going to get into car audio," because you don't make any of that stuff. So you have to use other people's stuff, right?
Yeah.
And you're going to end up with basically a Harman system probably that is badged for your company, and that you did some tuning on the speakers, right? But you can't really get in there and work on the car acoustics and all that kind of stuff like that. And whereas companies like Bose and Harman have substantial facilities to where they can get in there and actually bring the whole car in there and take out the saws or whatever they do. I visited Harman's once up in Detroit, but these are companies that have genuine expertise in this. But here's the thing.
Just anecdotally speaking, my dad and I have a C8 Corvette, and it's got a Bose sound system in it. And, when we got it, I didn't think anything about it because, fucking every car's got a Bose sound system in it, right? Yeah. I have to say, Corvette is a convertible, which is not great for sound anyway. But the car's not built for that. And the sound system sounds amazing. I mean, it is the only car audio system I've ever been able to enjoy Dark Side of the Moon on. I normally don't listen to Dark Side of the Moon in the car because it's just too dynamic, and a lot of the subtleties of that recording get lost in the road noise, things like that. You can listen to Dark Side of the Moon in the Corvette even with the top down, and it sounds amazing because when you put the top down, the head unit completely changes the EQ of the sound system.
Oh, wow.
And does different noise compensation. So, big fan of car audio systems with Bose. Yeah.
So here's the thing. So this gives Bose, well, certainly the McIntosh brand, which is well known, and Sonus Faber as well. If they want to do a Sonus Faber branded car, it gives them more options in terms of if you're GM or whoever, you don't have to get just a Bose sound system. You can get, we'll do McIntosh instead because we are a higher end company. Let's say you're Rivian, right? You're kind of more of a high-end company, and you want to have, Bose is fine, but you want to have a higher-end, more exclusive brand. Well, McIntosh, and it'll be the same people because the same people, whatever Harman brand, be it JBL or Lexicon or Infinity or what am I forgetting? Was there a Revel one? There was a Revel one, whatever it is, it's the same people doing it, right? Yeah. And I mean, you may call in the head of those brands and do a little cursory sort of tuning, but it's basically the same people doing it, which is what you want. Right?
Yeah.
So basically, this gives Bose the option to, to offer an upgrade brand that's well established, and also that I think doesn't have a lot of conflicts with Bose.
Well, McIntosh is mostly in Jeeps, right? Am I remembering that correctly?
I think you're right. I mean, they're already there, but for the car audio business is much bigger than most of the businesses that we deal with. Certainly the home theater business. Right. And I remember years ago, I went to an Infinity launch. This is probably 20 years ago, and I went to an Infinity launch, and they're doing a new line of Infinity speakers, and I'm kind of like. I mentioned to whoever was I think I know who, I can't remember who exactly it was, but I said, well, I bet I know who it was. one of the people that would talk very frankly to me. And he's still there, so I'm not going to say who it was. But anyway, I said, so it's like, why are they, it's like they haven't done anything with Infinity for years. Why are you guys bringing it back now? He says, well, we do a lot of business with, what was it, Chrysler. There's a lot of Chryslers with Infinity car systems. And so to maintain the brand, we have to keep a line of home products going, but all the revenue from it's going to be from the car side.
Oh, interesting.
And I remember being in a bus where he was explaining this to me. It was kind of like, okay.
Yeah.
So not that those Infinity products were bad or anything like that, but
You know, it's funny. I had a conversation this week at the YMCA that made me reconsider my thoughts about sort of brand synergy and things like that. So there's a young woman that works at the front desk that I always speak to, and I talked to her for an article that I'm writing. And we were just talking about sound in general, and I was like, "What do you have at home?" And she's like, "A crappy little Bluetooth speaker. It sounds like crap." And I was like, "Do you know what brand it is?" She's like, "Oh, it's just all capital letters. I don't know. Who knows, right?" But then she was like, "Oh, we just got a new speaker here in the lobby, and it's a JBL, and it sounds amazing." And so, like, do they make other speakers? Do they make the kind of speakers you write about? And I was like, "Yeah."
Oh, that's hilarious.
But it gets funnier because I was like, "Well, here's the thing. Like, you've got this Amazon thing that you bought, and it's just all capital letters, and you can't remember them. But JBL, you're going to remember. Like, why does JBL stand out to you?" And she was like, "Oh, they make great headphones."
Wow.
And I was like, wow, I've never really considered that. There's like, who is it? Bowers and Wilkins does this, with the Zeppelin and things like that, where they try to reach other markets and bring it back home, like hook people in different ways. And I've always been very, I guess, skeptical of whether or not that worked. But here's an indication that it kind of works. Like, people notice a brand doing something well, and they're kind of like, "Ooh, do they do related things?" So maybe this is good. Yeah.
Yeah. And I have to say, I'm going to claim some cred here because I might be, I was trying to think about this morning when I saw this announcement. I'm trying to think how many journalists who are still working and still alive have been to a press event where Amar Bose was actually there. Me.
Wow.
Stuart Walpin. You may know, I think.
No.
Okay. He's still working in the field. There's others. I mean,
well, I know of him. I just don't know him. Yeah.
There's like Ron Goldberg, but I don't think he works in the field anymore. But most of those people, and we were the kids at the time. Yeah. But most of those people are either departed or are long retired, But I've actually seen Amar Bose at an event, and I got a free Bose director's chair.
Oh, nice. Nice. Very nice.
And it was funny because I didn't know anything about audio at the time, very little. And I mean, I knew about pro audio. I didn't know anything about, consumer audio. And I said, well, I had mentioned to their product manager, Bose is, like an audiophile brand. He's like, no, audiophiles don't like us.
No. And you could see the reaction on Facebook. I sort of briefly dipped my toes into Facebook against all better judgment to see what people are saying about this. And, a lot of people are kind of like, "Oh, doom and gloom, no highs, no lows. Now it's McIntosh." And I'm just like, whatever, man.
Right. Can I make a bold statement?
Make it.
Everybody who says, "Oh, Bose, no highs, no lows, must be Bose," is an idiot. Because
wow,
those statements were based on products that no longer exist, or maybe they're still offered in some sort of cursory fashion, and they're still on the website. But actually getting your hands on one would be difficult.
Yeah,
those products are not a significant part of Bose's line now because, just like all these other companies, they're making headphones and portable speakers, right?
Yeah,
and soundbars. And that's the market now, right? Nobody cares about regular speakers. And also, all the people that designed those speakers where it's no highs, no lows, must be Bose, are dead.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
So it's like saying, oh, a Chevy? Oh, I had one of those in the 60s and it was terrible. It's just stupid.
Yeah.
It's completely stupid. This is not what this company makes anymore. They make, this is why I'm friends with them now, or not friends, but I'm on good terms with them now because they hated me back in the days of speakers because we did a very critical review of some of their speakers back when it was true. No highs, no lows must be Bose, right?
Yeah.
But, that was 30 years ago.
Well, let's also not forget that Bose was founded on a principle that audiophiles hate, which is audio research, right? I mean, that's the whole thing. I'm being dead serious, man.
You're right. However, in their defense, I'm going to defend audiophiles here. The principle was bogus, right? Because Dr. Bose had gone into concert halls and measured and figured out that 10% or what was it? 10% of the sound was direct and 90% was reflected or whatever. And so he tried to replicate that, by putting eight drivers that blow backwards and one that blows forwards, right? And they were just full range drivers. There were no tweeters in there. And it's a bogus concept because as friend of the pod, Michael Fremer pointed out to me one time, I think they threatened to sue him. Because he had a radio show in Boston or something, and he was talking about this. And he's like, "It's all that reverberance is already in the recording, right? That information is already in the stereo recording, and you do not need to double up on that. That's like capturing natural reverb and then adding more reverb, right?
Yeah.
So."
But it was still a research-based company. I mean, I think one thing that I would recommend people should do is go listen to an episode of 20,000 Hertz with Dallas Taylor called The Gift, because Bose has been a longtime sponsor of that podcast, which is all about sound. And he did an entire episode about the history of Dr. Bose and The Gift, which was, him leaving MIT, shares, controlling shares of the company, non-voting or whatever, blah, blah, blah. But still, they kind of got an endowment for the rest of, for as long as Bose exists, I guess. Yeah. So it's a really good episode. I'll put it in the show notes. And
cool.
Yeah.
So anyway, this is, I think, I seriously doubt that Bose is going to mess with these companies. I seriously doubt that Bose is going to do anything with them they may expand their distribution a little bit because Bose has some outlets that these companies don't. They may expand the distribution a bit, but I don't think they're going to mess with these companies because these companies are pretty good at what they do, and they do things that Bose doesn't do, right? And they have esteemed brands, and so I don't think that Bose is going to mess with them. I think they're just basically going to use the McIntosh brand for car stuff, and maybe Sonos.
For me, personally, the biggest benefit of all of this is that the McIntosh Group is no longer owned by a private equity firm. I mean, that's okay. That's to me. I'm tired of audio brands being owned by private equity. It's get out.
But now they're public equity, right? Bose? You can buy stock in Bose, right?
Well, yeah, but the thing is, Bose exists as an audio company, right? It's not just like a capital investment firm who bought a brand because they thought, well, this will make us a profit, and we're going to burn it to the ground in an effort to make 5% more today than we made yesterday, right?
Right.
I mean, I think Bose has a vested interest in the long-term health and sustainability of McIntosh, where no capital investment firm ever would. So that's a good thing in my opinion.
I'll also say, had Bose bought Bowers and Wilkins, there would have been essentially a shooting war. Between one firm's, very competent but very mass market engineering and another firm's, shall we say, erratic engineering.
We could be kind and say idiosyncratic.
Let's say, all right, idiosyncratic engineering. That would have been funny. So anyway, you want to move on?
Yeah, let's do it. I need to go get some water. So let's take a break and come back and talk about Erin's Audio Corner.
Yeah. This is Audio
Unleashed.
And now we are going to talk about a review that we liked and how it contrasts with some other reviews out there. I mean, this is sort of like, to me, this is sort of like almost the raison d'etre of this podcast. Is
Nice.
I took like 3 years of French in high school. The French teacher was really cute. But anyway,
nice.
So what were we talking about?
Erin's Audio Corner.
Erin's Audio Corner. Yeah. Anyway, so I happened to be on YouTube watching Rick Beato videos, and quite a good interview with Rick Wakeman, I must say. But anyway, and I saw, and it keeps serving me up things it thinks I will like, which one of the things I get a lot is Erin stuff. And so I saw, the hidden secrets of Børresen X3 speaker audiophiles need to know. And I was like, oh my God, Erin tested one of those things, huh? And so just to kind of recap, I think there's some sort of, I have a very mixed impression of what Michael Børresen, who's a Danish audio designer, he does the Børresen speaker brand. He also does Avik acoustics, which is like, a line of high-end electronics, amps and such, and preamps. And then he also does Ansu's acoustics, which is a line of tweaky products. And the rest of the stuff looks fine to me, but the Ansu stuff looks pretty dicey. And, we'll just, rather than me go into it, if you want to dig into it, we'll put a link to my Soundstage article in there. And you can find his comment at the end of it.
About it, the Ansu stuff,
we
I
did.
think.
Yeah. So anyway, but this guy's kind of revered by a lot of audio writers. And, they're reverers. And, we are not so much reverers.
Hey, let's hang on. Let's choose our words a little more carefully. They are reverent. Right. We are irreverent.
Right. I think so. I like my word reverers.
Oh, okay. Well,
if they don't have if they don't have somebody to revere, they're going to go find somebody. And
okay.
That's my opinion. Just my opinion.
Still irreverent.
But, there's been a lot of people that are, legendary designer Nelson Bass and all stuff. It's like, the dude makes amplifiers. Come on. And, et cetera, et cetera. And so this is the latest guy they've glommed onto as like a master of whatever. Anyway, so Erin's like taking on one of his speakers. I'm like, ooh, I've looked at his speakers and they're super expensive. Not this one. This is like the only one that's not crazily expensive. And it's an $11,000 a pair tower speaker. It looks like a high-end tower speaker. It's really nice looking. It's beautifully made. And all right, so $11,000 is a lot for any speaker, but you look at it and you're like, okay, fine. You would kind of expect to pay more if you were hip to high-end audio, right?
Yeah.
So I've looked at his design. It's like, well, it looks like it's fine. It's expensive, but it looks like it probably works okay. At least the driver layout's not insane. But I'm like, finally, I can see what these things look like, because Erin tested it, right? So Erin talks about it, and he's kind of like, I got it in, and one of his viewers drove him down from, I think, Chicago or somewhere. For Erin, I think
they came from Axpona, so yeah.
Yeah, so Chicago. And so, and Erin tested him. He's like, there's a lot of good things about this speaker. And there's a lot of things I like, but there's some things that really bother me about this speaker, including a lower mid-range dip and some kind of weird stuff in the upper mid-range lower treble. And kind of like, okay, all right, Erin, show me the measurements. I'm like, all right. And lo and behold, it's right there in the measurements. And there's also some things that you look at here. And if I measured this, if you said to me, Brent, how much does this speaker cost based on these measurements? I'd have said, if I just looked at this speaker, I'd say this is a very cheap three-way speaker. I should say it's got one mid-woofer. It's got two woofers, but they're only 4.5 inches. All these drivers are 4.5 inches, right? So it's effectively, I guess you call it a three-way, even though all the drivers are the same size, the three main drivers. And there's a tweeter. There's a big ribbon tweeter there. But I look at this, I'm like, this is a cheap three-way speaker because it has some pretty uneven bass. It's got a big, giant resonant hump at about 80 hertz. And Then it's got a big dip at, what is it, 200 something, right? And then it's kind of flat in the mids, and then it kind of starts to peak, and then it has another big dip above 2K, and then not a big dip. I mean, a few dB, but enough. And then it has kind of a somewhat rising treble, and the treble's elevated by a couple of dB. And the off-axis response looks fine, which is if you just look at the speaker and you know how speakers work, you're like, that's going to have good off-axis response. It would be really hard to screw that up. You'd have to cross the tweeter over at some insanely high frequency to have off-axis problems. And so you look at this and you go like, it's like they didn't really work on the transitions between drivers. It kind of looks like, I mean, there aren't any cheap three-ways I know of. But if you had a cheap three-way, I've measured some three-ways that were not done by people that really worked on their crossovers, and they looked like this. And I mean, I'm not sure it's going to sound bad, but it's going to have some noticeable flaws.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And I think Erin does, one of the things that I really, really love about this video, and I think maybe the point that we might have a little bit of conflict about or disagreement about is, to me, Erin breaks his video down into an introduction, and then he's got a subjective passage, which is just his listening impressions. And then he's got his objective passage, which is like, those are pretty much half and half of the video. And the objective passage is where he shows the measurements. But the subjective passage, I think, is my favorite thing about this video. I mean, I kind of almost think he could have spent, 30 seconds on the measurements, because what he really, really does well, and in a very accessible way, and in a very inviting way, in a very educational way, is just explain how the speaker works and how the, fundamental design of the speaker affects what you hear, right? And he doesn't, yes, the measurements are nice, and I love it when he goes in and he's kind of breaking down, well, okay, we'll look at the measurements. I could hear that. I couldn't hear that, and explaining why. But the real beauty of this video, what I love about it so much, is that it is an inspiration even to those of us who don't measure. I don't measure speakers myself. I don't have, a clip. I can, all of my stuff goes to the NRC. So, but there's still, what he does is explain how the actual performance metrics and design of the speaker affect what reaches your ear in a really, really brilliant way. And again, the measurements to me are just sort of a footnote to that. So,
yeah, well, that's why I kind of wanted to bring this up, is because this is in my opinion, this is a really useful review. This is what you want in a speaker review, right? Especially a speaker that you're going to spend $11,000 on. Yeah. You want to know, like, okay, it'd be nice to know someone's, emotional reaction to it or whatever, right? But I kind of want to know, like, all right, are there any problems with this thing? Because I've seen speakers that get great reviews. There's like a really cheap LS35A copy from Sound Artist, I think. And I've seen some pretty glowing reviews of it, and a lot of people prefer it to the, more expensive LS35As. But then Amir at Audio Science Review measured it, and I look at that and I'm like, no, I don't want that. Because the measurements are a mess. You can, my ideal is I want something that I like for whatever reason, but also that measures reasonably well, right? That doesn't have clear engineering errors. And so I just thought, like, well, what do other people think about this speaker? So I went and watched a bunch of other YouTube reviews. And there's one from, was it Jason Kennedy at Absolute Sound? Although I learned a lot from that review.
Really? What? Name one thing you learned.
This is going to blow your mind, right?
Okay.
Prepare yourself. I figured out the reason that people say in between phrases is to let people know, like, I'm still talking, I have more to say, but I'm just taking a little pause here. Okay, so there's a function for saying and whatever. So, but he doesn't. He just it's just dead silence, and you're sitting there going like, is the video over?
Oh,
it's pretty.
boy.
Anyway, but yeah, he's basically all the subjective reviews basically said the same. They all rave about the sound staging on this thing. And I mean, Steve Guttenberg, who we love, friend of the pod. I'm saying that a lot today, aren't I?
That time I think you meant it.
Okay, I did mean it. I didn't mean it with Michael Fremer, but whatever. I like Michael, but whatever. Anyway, so they all are raving about the sound staging, and I look at these measurements and going, "Oh, gee, elevated treble above about 4K." Well, that would kind of give you some little extra juice on the sound staging at the expense of sounding somewhat bright, especially since you have only 2 4.5-inch woofers doing all your bass. Except, and he does seem to have engineered a hump in the bass here that would, much like an LS35A, that would give you, and actually it's in about the same place as an LS35A, it would give you an impression of more balance in the sound, right? But the treble is elevated, not a whole lot, but it's a couple dB. And, if I was a speaker designer, I'm like, I want people to rave about my sound staging. I would do exactly that. I'd be like, okay, I'm going to change the resistor on the tweeter and give it a couple of extra dB.
Yeah.
But everyone's raving about it. And it's like, if I didn't have this Erin review to go by, I'd be kind of like, I mean, I still kind of want to listen to this thing, but although, have a tower speaker with 2 4.5-inch woofers, you're just not going to get that much out of 2 4.5-inch woofers.
Yeah, yeah.
If he'd have put a side-firing woofer, which granted would have screwed up the industrial design, or you know what? Put a bandpass woofer in it and bury it in the box. And there's enough room for it.
Those
put a bandpass woofer in there just to take over from 100 hertz on down. And I've seen people do that. We talked about a speaker that had that. I can't remember whose it was, but it just seemed like a really cool design because bandpass woofers do not sound good if you run them into the upper bass, right? They start to sound really muddy. But in terms of like the bottom 2 octaves or something of bass, they work fine.
Yeah.
So it just goes to show you all these other reviews are just like guys kind of reacting emotionally to it and like, oh, the sound staging was incredible. And in fact, if you buy these speakers, and granted, $11,000 a pair, if you look, you can look at them and go like, well, yeah, that's a reasonable price for that speaker. You might be dazzled by them, but I think that if you get them, these are going to be the speakers that you probably trade in a couple of years because you get tired of them.
Yeah.
That's just my guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. And I think a bigger thing is, there's a phrase that Erin uses a lot in his reviews, sanity check. And I feel like this video in particular is one of the biggest sanity checks that Erin has ever done. And that's one of the reasons I really appreciate it, because he's kind of the only person that we've seen who is approaching this speaker from the point of view that objective criteria affect your subjective perceptions, right?
Right.
Which is like, how could they not, right? But everything else is just kind of touchy-feely. I mean, who wrote this Hi-Fi Pig review? Stuart Smith. I don't know Stuart. I've seen some of his stuff. He seems like a really, really nice guy. Yeah. I'm sure we'd have fun, at dinner together. But like, in his review, he's talking about the first impressions, and he's like, when I turned it on, I was so disappointed because I could hear the carbon fiber in the bass and mid-range drivers, and it's talking about how the music sounded sharp and reverby or whatever, and then that went away after a few days, and never once does he consider the fact that he just got used to it. I mean, I just finished reviewing a speaker that had problems, serious problems. It was 2.5-way design, just not a well-designed crossover network. But the funny thing is, after about a day of listening to nothing but that speaker, I'd be like, well, this is fine. It's fine. And then I would switch back to my paradigms and go, nope, that was not fine. Right. But it only sort of takes about a couple of days of listening to one speaker and only that speaker. And you're just like, was I wrong? Was my first impression bad? Because look, nobody wants to trash anything. I hate writing bad reviews. I hate it because you're always like, am I missing something? Did I mess up? You don't want to be the guy that says a good speaker is bad. And so it's really hard. But but just to lean on silly notions like burn-in, and I don't know, it's just really frustrating for me. And again, I appreciate Erin's sanity check.
Yeah, I just look at this response curve though, and I'm like, because I've watched videos of Michael Børresen because I'm kind of like, what's this guy like, right? I'm looking at this, and he's very, very proud of his driver design, and they really do like their own proprietary drivers and everything, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they're really putting a lot of effort into this, and the stuff they're doing in their driver design is not dumb. It seems fine, but they don't seem to be working on the crossover here, and that's why I'm looking at this going like, God, what if you gave this speaker to Vance Dickinson and let him work on the crossover? I mean, because there's nothing wrong with this speaker. As from looking at this frequency response curve, it looks like all the problems are in the crossover. It's not in the drivers. It's not in the design. It's that they did not work on their crossover.
Yeah.
And, it's like if Vans could take this thing and bam, 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 probably save you money on manufacturing costs.
Yep.
and get this thing probably really singing. Because again, there's so many high-end speakers where I look at them like, that doesn't work.
Yeah.
Why are they doing that? You look at this speaker, it's like, there's no reason that can't work.
Right. Yeah. Yep.
So.
Well, thanks for the sanity check, Erin. We always appreciate it, but this one was really, really good. This is one of your best, Erin. So, good stuff. Anyway, you want to take a break, get some water, and bring in our buddy Lauren Dragan?
Let's do it.
All right, we'll be right back, y'all. And welcome back. This is Audio
Unleashed.
Nice. And the voice you're hearing there, as we said before, is headphone expert Lauren Dragan, who currently writes for Wirecutter. And she is with us today to talk about new developments with Apple AirPods Pro 2, which recently added hearing aid functionality, of all things, with a recent update. So, I don't know. Lauren, take it away. This is a big deal. Tell us why it's a big deal.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, first of all, the fact that we're talking about hearing aids in the general sphere is incredible on its own, because hearing health has just been such a stigmatized aspect of our society for so long, which is kind of a bummer, because we don't treat glasses like that anymore. We don't really treat other types of, things that happen as we age as being such a quiet affair. But for some reason we don't, and that was not a pun intended, I'm so sorry. But, we don't, we don't really talk about it a lot. And so it's kind of nice to have people talking about it. And, I think it also is going to push the industry in the right direction. Whether or not these are actually functional day to day is a separate thing, but I still think in the general direction, it's a great step.
Yeah. I actually bought a pair of the AirPods Pro 2 right at the time they did this update. I didn't buy them for the hearing aid functionality. I bought them because my old earphones were dying because they were like a year and a half old. I got to do the hearing test, and I was kind of surprised. I mean, it pretty much tracks perfectly with like the audiogram that I had from earlier this year, and also the results from the Mimi app. So, I mean, it seems to me it's reasonably accurate. Brent, you did the test too. You actually sullied yourself and got an iPhone in and did the testing. How were the results for you? Were they as expected?
Lauren sent me an iPhone.
I know. I was just about to say, what are you implying about my iPhone, Dennis? How dare you?
But I'm just saying, Brent doesn't do iPhone.
I don't do iPhone. So I have an iPad. It's about 1 million years old, but it still works. Anyway, so but it won't run the hearing test. That's why I had to borrow an iPhone. Anyway, so I did it. And, I've done like y'all, I've had my hearing tested, and I've not real recently, but and I've done a lot of these hearing test things on different apps and stuff. And normally my right ear is really, really good, and my left ear is not so good. I have a significant noise notch, and it kind of looked at my ears and kind of thought they were more the same. Maybe my right got worse, but my left looked better than I'm used to. But it's like, well, okay, fine. But it said, the nice thing is no significant hearing loss. I'm kind of like, huh.
Yeah.
Well, I do have significant hearing loss, but not to the point where it impairs me in day-to-day life, and I seem to do okay reviewing gear. But, I know I have a high-frequency roll-off. I can't hear above 12 kilohertz, but this thing doesn't care about that.
Right.
Right.
I was just about to say that. And, look, I think... First of all, I have to commend them because I do feel as though they did put thought into the hearing test. It is not one of those ones where you can gamify it. You can't sit there and try to guess.
Yes.
They did a really good job of making it random, jumping around, changing pitches, changing the spacing between when they play the pitches. And so that in itself I thought was really great because it keeps you kind of honest. And I personally, my results were like Dennis's, pretty close. Although what you're saying, Brent, is something that I also noticed is that there's a really broad range of what they consider none to mild hearing loss. Like you could get that with 0 dB or 5 dB of, potential hearing loss all the way up to like the 30s. And we still got that. And I was like, that's kind of wild that they consider it that. But I'm not sure what they're using as that metric necessarily. I'm not sure if they are talking about above a certain frequency range. I have zero idea, but it seems as though they're only testing up to 8K because that's the clinical level at which they test usually for basically intelligibility. That's really what they're testing for. They're making sure that you're able to participate in day-to-day life. They're not really thinking about whether or not you're an audiophile and listening to things that are going up to 20K. But yeah, look, I think they did a good job. I think really, it's more for me where I have more of an issue is the actual use of them as a hearing aid down the line, because I think the test is a great, indicator too. I think that a lot of people, what is such a huge bummer, and I don't understand why, is like when you go to your annual physical, as you should every year, they don't really test hearing. I've never had that happen. It's you test it when you're a little kid, maybe when you're in school, and then they maybe test it again later on in life. But for the most part, you spend most of your decades of living without any sort of hearing test. So I love that this gives people an opportunity just to check and get a baseline, because unless you're going to Costco and wandering into the hearing section to get a test, I don't know. That's not something we really do on a regular basis. So that part is great. I think it's also because there's a lot of people I know who did not know they had hearing loss. And we're talking in their 20s and 30s until they started running some of these tests, whether it was the Mimi one before or, in fact, I ran a panel, this was a while back, with the Mimi, where someone had some headphones that they were testing for me, and I said, hey, run this thing, it'll help it, see if you like the EQ. And that was when she realized that she had hearing loss, because she was like, oh my God, I didn't realize that, all this time I've just needed to boost the high frequencies. I just thought music always sucked. And I was like, oh dear.
Yeah.
She goes, I just thought headphones all sucked. And I was like, oh, honey. So I think that's a really net good as well. Yeah. It's just as hearing aids, we did some initial testing, and it's a little bit of I have a little bit of differing opinions on that one.
My dad's perspective on it was interesting. And I think I mentioned this to you before, Lauren, but I don't know if we really drilled down into it, is, my dad said to me when I was telling him about this update, he was like, man, I wish I'd have had that 20 years ago. He was like, because I probably needed hearing aids 20 years ago. He was like, but I just was scared that things wouldn't sound right. He was like, the world sounded the way it sounded. And it was like, I was worried that if I went and got hearing aids, I wouldn't like the way the world sounded, or everything would sound robotic or weird, or I would feel weird. Or he was like, if I had just had, the opportunity to sort of just dip my toes in or test drive the experience then that probably would have gotten me to the ear doctor, as he called it, and gotten some real hearing aids.
Yeah.
And I thought that was an interesting point.
And I hope that that's what this will do. And I think, there's two things about what you said that kind of strike me is, I think a lot of people have based their opinion on what hearing aids are going to be from word of mouth or experience from things that were created 10, 15 years ago. And stuff has improved so much since then. The sound quality, the microphones that are picking up, the directionality, all that different stuff. And, even now with the different AI stuff that they're doing with some of the software on the prescription level ones, there's just some really amazing things going on that are like miles away from what you probably experienced with older stuff. So that's one aspect. But the other thing that concerns me is that there isn't an education component to the hearing test part of the AirPods. So one aspect that a lot of people don't know when they go to get hearing aids is that your brain needs time to adapt to that new stimulus. I liken it to when you move to a new place and the first week or so, everything wakes you up, like the garbage truck going by and the sound of, some siren going by and whatever it is that's new in the house. But over time, your brain kind of gets used to it and then you sleep through it and you don't even notice it anymore. And the same thing is happening with those high frequencies. Your brain is going like, oh, this is stimulus I have not gotten in a while. Is this a problem? Should we be concerned about this? And so everything sounds sharp or hissy or way too much, overwhelming. And so, audiologists all recommend that you spend a significant amount of time when you first get your hearing aids just sort of wearing them as much as possible and getting used to it because your brain will adjust. The thing about that is, we're not getting that education in the AirPods, and I'm concerned that some people will hear it and go, oh my gosh, this is just, this is too much. I must not have as bad hearing loss as I thought I did. And then they will dismiss it out of hand. Or that they will try to, but because the battery life on the AirPods is only, 5.5 hours, 6 at most, if you don't have any sort of processing like noise cancellation or, on. So you're not going to really have that immersion time because they're going to die and you're going to have to charge them and then you have to take a break and then just kind of start over again. So it's not a full day worth of hearing aid. And that could be problematic. So that's something I was thinking a lot about as we went into this. Now, that said, I have been told by people, one of my panelists that we did some early testing was thrilled with what they did for music and phone calls. So when you put in your, audiogram, whether it's through their testing or putting in your own manually from your doctor, that I've been told is just incredible and just like everything you've always wanted if you had hearing aids before. You wanted them to sound like when they played music. So for that's great. I think that there's just a lot of little caveats that I kind of like sort of want to stand on my soapbox and warn everyone to be like, okay, just so you know, don't judge everything by this, but at the same time, it's not bad. It's still good in some ways. And so that's my little, I don't know, spiel about it.
You're grappling with nuance. Huh.
I know.
You're not going to make it in this industry, kid.
You're telling me. And, look, as the hearing aid themselves, they take a little bit of adjustment from what I've been told, and that can be really cumbersome because you have to kind of fiddle around with it to get, especially when you have a noisy background. So let's say you have the TV on or you're at a restaurant or something, it takes a good while to dial them in. And again, this is something that you're doing without any sort of supervision, with no sort of guidance. And so if you've never done this before and you don't know what they could sound like if you had good hearing aids, you might not pursue it any farther and just not use them because you're like, oh God, this is just too much. It's overwhelming. So there's that too. And I think, there is this desire for hearing aids to be in that $200 to $500 price point. And I think they will get there. I just think that we're not quite there yet. For a variety of reasons, but I also think we're not thinking about one of the most important things, which is the customer service and support aspect. And I
Ooh.
I'm surprised that Apple didn't have that. Maybe they will down the line. Maybe they'll have something down the line where it can be like Apple Hearing Care Plus or something, or Apple Health Care Plus. But great, I'm giving Apple ideas. But but I mean, at this point, they're getting into healthcare. I mean, it's pretty obvious that they're trying to invest in being into health tech. So. Yeah, maybe they'll do that down the line. But for now, you're kind of on your own, and it can be challenging, to dial it in.
Pro tip for anybody out there who's struggling with these things, go get some Comply foam tips, man, because I just could not make the silicone tips work. But getting some foam tips, the memory foam tips, transformed my experience with these things.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I have a question for you, Lauren.
Yes.
In terms of music reproduction, you've tried a lot of hearing aids.
Mm-hmm.
I've tried a few. I've reviewed a few. But how does the Apple AirPods Pro compare to a hearing aid? Granted, there's a giant range of hearing aids, but a typical good hearing aid you'd get. How does this compare for music reproduction?
So that's one of the reasons why I mentioned earlier that for phone calls and music, my panelist was so thrilled, is because hearing aids are generally designed to do two things. One is to boost high frequencies, generally speaking, when we're talking like over-the-counter initial, first hearing aid that you're getting for the most part, because that's where most people are losing first, is those high frequencies. So they usually have some sort of balanced armature driver in there that, can react quickly. Mm-hmm. And the other thing is they're trying to do economy of space. So they're trying to make them as tiny as possible while still getting all of the things that you want them to do. So, Bluetooth and good battery life and, water resistance and controls and all this stuff. And so they're trying to pack it into this tiny little space. And as we know with true wireless earbuds, that real estate can get taken up really quickly. And so as a result, most of these companies are not putting in a different driver to handle lower frequencies. They're usually tiny and quick so that they can, get those sounds. So they sound great for the world because you're getting the natural sounds that you can already hear okay. So everything's coming through. They're usually not sealed in the ear canal. They're you're getting the stuff that, is sort of already in your hearing range, just supplemented with this little extra high-end detail that you have lost.
Yeah.
But in the case of these sort of hearable earbud style hearing aids, you're now relying on everything to come through the headphones, which is good and bad. Great for music because everything is sort of, it's basically just a customized EQ. So you're getting those low, notes reproduced appropriately, because they're designed to do that, unlike hearing aids. But you also aren't getting as much world, specifically when you're talking about like location-based sound, for multiple reasons. One being just the number of microphones and the directionality and the software and the development that happens, at a hearing aid company that is, takes a long time to do. So you're sacrificing your kind of real world sense of space. There's still that, occlusion effect and lack of directionality, but, you're getting the world through headphones that can reproduce, so I think that's something.
Well, let me ask you this though, because we both heard, companies like Bose have done open ear headphones. Mm-hmm. And they have voiced them to get what I think is a pretty neutral and listenable sound. It doesn't sound all, And I'm kind of curious as to whether these hearing aid companies can eventually get to that point where they have a hearing aid that sounds like a decent set of, earbuds for music.
I think they could. I think they absolutely could. I think it's just a matter of doing it. And that's one of the reasons why I was so excited when hearing aids became available over the counter because, medical tech companies that are, largely paid for by health insurance are not motivated necessarily by consumer demand. They're motivated by what they can get prescribed and get covered and get, and people will buy. So I think this is opening up to a lot more of those hybrid type designs. And I think that's one of the reasons why companies that have the hearing aid parent companies or partnerships tend to do a better job. So, you look at like Jabra specifically, they're owned by GN. They have hearing, so they already have that built-in development in their wheelhouse, and they just need to combine the consumer technology with it. And I think it's totally doable. I just think that we're asking a lot of these products. And one of the things, again, is those open-ear design Bose and other things, they don't have the battery life. Moving low frequencies also does take more energy, and all of these things, all this processing that's happening, all of this sucks up power really fast. So I think it's going to honestly take either us getting accustomed to having like a swappable battery that we can change partway through the day, or, eventually a technology development that happens where we can make smaller power cells. Because it really just comes down to real estate. And I think that's one of the issues that, we haven't talked about yet with the AirPods is that, there are places where wearing earbuds are normal. And you might think, oh, well, this feels really like it's great because now I'm not stigmatized with wearing hearing aids. But there are also places where wearing earbuds is not normalized. And it's kind of going to require explanation, which then is going to call more attention to the fact that you're wearing something to supplement your hearing. So, and some places where even it's banned. I'm thinking specifically of schools, courthouses, standardized testing. A lot of businesses don't allow them for security reasons and also just for productivity reasons. So you then have to go through all this rigmarole to get them approved and to make sure that prove that they're not connected to your phone and and it's a whole thing that now creates another hassle that you were trying to avoid in the first place,
Yeah, good point.
Yeah.
Really good point.
So, it's a mixed bag, right? Like, I think that's I know that, again, you're talking about nuance, which isn't fun. It's more fun to be like, they're great or they're terrible. But I think that they're a step in the right direction. And I think that that's commendable in itself,
Yeah. I agree, too. I mean, I think that it's just this is not the end game, which I think a lot of people were kind of expecting it to be. Just because it says Apple on it. And Apple has more resources than anybody, almost anybody, well, probably more than anybody, to actually tackle this problem. So I think a lot of people were thinking, well, is this it? But it's just another step, and there's a long way to go. And like you said, the problems here are, the problem is not digital signal processing horsepower, because that's available now in earbuds to do colossal things we haven't even tapped into yet. But the problem is the battery life, really, I guess, is the bottom line. And to have a 5-hour battery life on these things is just not really, you can't keep them in all day. Yeah.
And I wonder how long.
You can't pop them in for a restaurant, though. That's true.
Well, if you can dial in the noise issues. Like, I think... So if you're able to take the time to really dial them in to handle background noise, yes, you could use them for a restaurant. I think that out of the box, just doing your first test, they're great for things like libraries or lectures where, you need to hear someone who is talking in a space, either quietly or in like a large room, and you don't want to have to be like, speak up, They're great for that. That's how I talk, by the way.
That is not how I talk.
Yes. But also, I don't know what Apple's doing next because, they're doing all of those research studies. And, so I signed up for one just because I wanted to kind of see what they were up to. And they've been working on this for years. They've been doing these hearing health studies in conjunction with the Apple Watch and with the metrics on your phone testing how long and how loudly you listen to things. And then they have you do hearing tests periodically, and they have you report back like, you were in a loud environment. Were you wearing hearing protection? And so they're definitely doing a lot of studies, and obviously, that's a nicety. And I'm sure that yes, Apple does things that are charitable, But, they're a business. There's a business plan behind all of this. So there's a reason why they're doing all of these studies and collecting all of this data beyond just helping out some university, And so the question is I think that this is great because it gave them the market research without having to release a separate product. They're putting something out that already people will want and use, and they'll say, oh, well, this is an added bonus. And then they get lots of feedback, and they can, reconnoiter it for whatever comes next, whether they start releasing healthcare products or whether they go the other direction where they have a hearing device that is also an Apple headphone, an Apple product. So who knows? It's a weird world we're in right now. So
yeah, and you still have stuff to write about, so that's good.
Yes, I'm always glad to be busy. As much as I hate wading through all the boxes, I love being busy.
Yeah. Brent, you know what I'm regretting, buddy?
What?
The fact that we've got a professional voice actor in our midst, and we didn't write a script for her to do the closing credits. Because she's here for the closing credits, man. We could have just pawned that off onto her instead of fumbling through them the way we normally do.
I like our fumbling.
I do also like your fumbling. You guys are you're very...
That's part of the charm of us fumbling because we are not very professional.
You're unleashed. I am leashed.
Well,
you know what? This has gone way too personal. I'm sorry. I should probably.
I was about to say this took a turn for the kinky.
It really did, But you know what they say about audiophiles.
There's a lot of things that people say about audiophiles.
I'll just leave it. I'm just going to leave that. Leave it there.
Okay, yeah, it's probably for the best.
But if you do want me to do it, I will do it for you. It's up to you.
Oh, okay, well, go.
I don't. Did you send them to me?
It's a butter burger. It's a butter burger production.
This was a butter burger production, and this time it was edited by Dennis Berger. I'm assuming that's what I've heard, right? Yeah. And it's your hosts were Brent Butterworth and Dennis Berger, and your guest was me.
We normally don't do that part. That's good. Yeah.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. And your guest was me, Lauren Dragan, and. What
music?
Else do we need to do? Do we need to thank people? Is there something?
Who did the music?
So there's music by both Brent Butterworth and the Butterburger House Band this week. So that's very lovely. And then I'm assuming after this, people who are Patreons are going to get to hear something. What is it they're going to get to hear, you guys?
We're going to talk about the demise of Cedia.
Oof, rough.
Yeah.
All right. Well, so yeah, if you're a Patreon, stay on for After Hours. And hear about that.
Nice. Lauren, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
It's always great
Thanks,
having
Lauren.
you. Yeah, everybody, I guess we'll see you in a couple of weeks. But patrons, stick around. We got one more for you.
Yep.
Hey, thanks for sticking around to the end. If you liked what you heard and wish there'd been a little bit more of it, we got some good news for you.
Indeed, we do. If you check out patreon.com/Audio Unleashed, all one word, you can get new episodes a little earlier than everybody else.
And sometimes it's like a day or two early. Sometimes it's nearly a week. We never really know until we start editing.
But the big plus is that you get extended cuts of every episode. And usually that's going to mean a whole extra segment that's about maybe a geekier topic or something that's a little more personal to us or something that's just going to really appeal to the hardcore Audio Unleashed listener.
Yeah, what it boils down to is if you're somebody who would support Audio Unleashed on Patreon, we're going to make sure the bonuses to every episode are really aimed straight at your interests.
Yeah, and so if you want to hear these segments, you can subscribe to our Patreon for $3 a month, which is less than I spend every single day on my cup of coffee when I go to Starbucks to write my boring articles.
Yeah. One more time with that URL, that's patreon.com/Audio Unleashed.
Or Audio
Unleashed. Yeah. Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.